Hello out there, and today guys in front of you we have the Boker Gust, and this is a knife designed by Serge Panchenko that I picked up at Blade Show 2019 just a couple weeks ago, but it has gotten a significant amount of pocket time, more than anything that I picked up at the show since I've been back, and I bet you can guess that is a very good thing. It means I like this knife, it means I'm enjoying carrying it and using it, and yeah, that is a little bit odd for me for a Boker because, as you might well know, I don't have very many Bokers on this channel at all. And to be honest, when it comes to the quality of execution of a lot of Boker designs, I'm oftentimes just underwhelmed. You know, there are a lot of great designs that Boker has had in the past that I have just been disappointed with as far as the security, the lockup, the fit and finish, just a lot of things. And there were a few designs from Boker at Blade Show that I was interested in, and I was willing to come home with more than one of them. But I only came home with one, and it was this one. And that's because for all the faults of the knife, and it isn't a perfect knife, the one thing that it really does have going for it, apart from its great looks, is the fact that this thing is a vault. It is built really, really well. Maybe well isn't the right word, but it's overbuilt, and I like that. You know, I like that in a Boker design that only costs $60. You know, every time I've had an issue with a Boker that was in like the $50, $60, $70, $80 price range, people always say, oh, if you get the nicer things, then those are done really well. Well, that's great and all, but I don't think I should have to spend $150 or $200 to get a well-made knife from a company. They should be able to do it at this price point, at any price point. And so I am happy to be able to say that Boker has executed this thing pretty well. But we're skipping a little bit ahead. Let me get into some size comparisons with this Panchenko design. And it's going to be listed as a 2.75 inch blade length. But as you can see there, it really is just a 2.5 plus cutting edge. You know, it has this, this sharpening choil, forward choil there, that sort of takes up the rest of the blade length. For size comparison, let's bring out a few things. And the size is going to be really significant when we get back to the weight. So here it is next to the Para 3. See, the Para 3 is a longer knife with a longer blade. What else do we have? Something somewhat comparable is the Ace Biblio. Comparable in almost all dimensions, actually. And what else? 943. And of course, let's grab one of the mini Griptilians. There we go. All right, so it is a smaller knife. It's not this massive, full-bodied kind of EDC, except for the fact that it is heavy and overbuilt and does feel like a user. But if you think about Serge Panchenko designs, you know, you don't usually get anything that's really that massive. And even though this is a heavy knife and it does fill the hand pretty well, it isn't that thick in width either. Taking a look next to that Para 3 again. You know, so it's not a chunky knife. It just has this density. And guys, I think I brought out the scale when I did my like Blade Show pickups video, and I was even surprised at how heavy it was because I was not expecting. I mean, 5.08 ounces. It is just a chunk of stainless steel on each side. Stainless steel frame lock, no milling on either side of the scales really to give any weight relief. So for comparison, a knife that is somewhat similar in size. Where is it? The thought I had the CRKT Polar 2, the large Polar. 3.99 ounces on that. So a whole extra ounce, both of these stainless steel frame locks that are also very comparable in size. Just to provide scope of this 5.7 ounces. Here's the Super Freak. So yeah, certainly we have different materials here, but I mean, a lot of people, when they're talking about weight these days, they're like, oh, it's just a number and it really doesn't matter. And for the most part, I sort of agree. You know, if a knife is 4 ounces, I don't really consider it heavy. You know, just each situation merits its own like consideration, sure. But usually, as long as it's not an extreme number, it doesn't really have much bearing to me. But in this case, definitely, I mean, taking a look at these two knives is a glaring difference in weight and in length. So I want you to be very much aware of that if you're going to buy the knife. It does have an extreme amount of density. Now, like I said in my previous video, you don't really feel it in the pocket too much. So that's not a negative. And when I'm cutting with the knife, it's not a negative either. It's just heavy. It's not going to slow you down, but it's heavy. So now that I spent 3 minutes talking about that, let's get into the rest of the knife. And what we have is just a beautiful blade right here, guys. This is a Serge Panchenko design, like I said, and I have been a fan of his designs for a while. And this blade is just beautiful. Boker just nails this stonewash. It looks like an acid kind of stonewash. Just a great kind of look to it. Let's see if I can't get this better focused and just show. Yeah, just a great looking stonewash on the blade. This is D2 steel. Out of box, very sharp. Flat ground, so seems like it'll hold its edge pretty well, and it's still pretty thin behind the edge too, so it does slice nicely, all things considered. Then as we move on back, like I said, stainless steel frame. The most appealing thing visually for this knife is definitely the show side scale, and it definitely has that like Serge kind of curvature to it that really makes it his kind of piece. And if you're a fan of his and his designs, I think this is a big selling point, because at least for me, it gives it an identity that, you know, if they didn't have these kind of curves, if it was just gold, it would still be his design, but it wouldn't feel as much like it as it does. And so I really like that they went this route. They executed it well. Another really nice stonewash on the show side scale as well. So yeah, just a great job with that gold and that decision in the design. Going all the way to the back, we do have a 1-position pocket clip. One thing that I do like that they did, if you're not going to be able to reverse it, they did have the 1 pocket clip screw also serve as the standoff screw, and it goes all the way through. So just minimizing some of the hardware, which is nice. They also, you know, do have these 2 standoffs. They're nicely polished, so again, just adds a little bit of a pop. Really a fan of the hardware just popping the way that it does on this knife. The clip, getting back to that, it's subtle, so it does have that going for it. It is pretty deep carry, but not a loop over. A little bit hard to get in and out of like jeans or any kind of thick pocket, but for the most part, I've had zero kind of real functional issue. It serves its purpose just fine. What else? So talking about the lockup of the knife. So the lockup is excellent. And you can imagine if you have just a beefy, or not even beefy, but just thick slabs of stainless steel creating this frame lock, you should be able to expect a perfect lockup, and that is really what we have. One of the things, and not really issues that I've had with the knife, but one of the things that has been sort of a work in progress is finding the sweet spot with the pivot, tightening it how far it needs to go in order for it to really flick open well. So it was very stiff, and the good thing is that as much as I like loosen this knife and play with it, the lockup up and down stays very secure, and we still have a very nice like percentage lockup here, so I'm very happy with that. Getting into the action though, as we segue and talk more about it, there are just some interesting aspects of this knife. If there are any like oddities or quirks, it's going to be right here, because there's actually a washer connected to the pivot, which I might have seen maybe once or twice, but you don't see it very often on knives, and I'm not 100% sure why it's there. It's I think maybe just to create that seal. I'm not sure, but it's like a plasticky, like Teflon washer. And then we have 2 more plastic washers on the inside and 2 bronze ones as well. So just a lot going on. And I've lubricated them and have used some knife pivot lube and gotten this knife to be a lot smoother than it was when I first got it, but I think really just the adjustment of the pivot is what really made that happen. Now the knife opens and closes really well. It's not going to free drop, but it is nice and snappy. I can spider flick it right-handed most of the time, like that, so that's good. But yeah, no kind of free dropping, but it is very smooth. There's a good strong detent, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So execution wise of that aspect of the opening and closing, it is pretty darn good. You can slow roll it really nicely and just pop it out with your thumb and middle finger and then go the rest of the way. And you can see in the closed position you have this opening hole. A lot of access to it right-handed. Left-handed not so much, but with it not being reversible, that probably won't be too big of a concern. And even, opening it left-handed, not an issue really at all. So yeah, I've got to say, guys, overall, this knife is I think it's a win. I think it's a good executed design by Serge Panchenko for Boker, which is a breath of fresh air for me, because when I think about his other designs and some of my other Bokers, they just haven't really been that great. They've always had this like glaring issue, the Lancer never really locked up quite right, and the Keyhon by Lucas Burnley just had play in the detail. I mean, just like everything, the Urban Trappers were just crappy. Every one that I've seen, and even though they're great designs, they just aren't followed through upon. And while I would have liked to have seen maybe some weight relief here, or a couple other design aspects that would have made this better, I think that they nailed really just making a solid knife. One thing that I missed, now that we're 12.5 minutes in, I'm remembering, talk about the ergonomics. There's no jimping, but I haven't had any issues. The knife cutting with it is heavy. It seems to want to stay in one place. And when I was cutting and doing like pull cuts or just slicing, it was just fine. All of these little curves, these like Panchenko trademark features here, they do serve for a little bit of like texturing and points of contact. And so the knife isn't really going to slide on you too much. It isn't super slick on the spine here, so I mean you can bear down and get a pretty good comfortable purchase. So smaller hands maybe would be best for this, but even if you have large hands, I think that this is going to be the best in-hand Panchenko Boker that you're going to come across. Maybe the Lancer's up there, but this one, I mean, feels like it wants to be used in a way that Lancer never did. And so that's where I think the big benefit is, and that's where I think the big like standout is, that this is a Serge Panchenko design that you can pick up, you can use, you can beat up on, and still have something signature to what that designer is, so it's a departure in that regard, but it's a very welcome departure and makes me happy about getting a good Boker, especially with some of the other designs even recently that have disappointed me. So that's what we have, guys. It's one that I would definitely recommend at the $60 price point. I think if you want a small kind of like EDC that might be a little bit heavy, but it sure can get some stuff done, this is a good one to go with. So any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll talk with you soon. Take care.